And welcome to this very special edition of the Armstrong-Williams Show. We look back on the life and career of Dr. Benjamin Solomon Carson, who's our guest for the full hour tonight as we celebrate his past, present, and future. Dr. Carson, welcome to the broadcast. And, well, Dr. Carson will be joining us. You know, before we get to Dr. Carson, when you look at what happened in recently at Brown University, Bondi, Australia, New York, Brooklyn, and other places, just the mass killing, just this savagery of these assassins and these terrorists where they have no value of life. And we always like to talk about family values. Who could have ever imagined that in Sydney, Australia, it was a father and a son? And you have to ask yourself, what are these parents on this radical Islam teaching their kids? What are they growing up with? Are there other kids in the household? How did his wife feel about this? How did the extended family about this? How pervasive is it? I mean, when you look at, if you watch that footage of just how they were just massacring people as if they were animals. It was so unconscionable watching just all of it unfold. And you have to ask yourself, I mean, is this the world that we live in today? Is this really what we become? And you look at this situation at Brown University where you just go into the engineering school and you just start shooting people. Like, some people want to think that it was personal and it was some kind of vendetta. It doesn't matter what it is. But one thing I have concluded, that as much as you like to blame this on mental illness and whatever, I mean, this is not a case of mental illness. This is calculated. It is well planned. It is well organized. No different than in Australia. They knew exactly there would be a Hanukkah celebration. They knew there would be a large number of Jews that were celebrating, and they targeted them. I mean, it's mind-boggling. And even when someone was able to tackle and wrestle one of the gunmen and take the gun away, it was like, it was not even watching a movie, it was real life. This is what it really looks like when you see the senselessness and the spiritual illness and what we've become. But anyhow, I will get into some of this with our very special guest, Dr. Carson. Dr. Carson, welcome to the airways, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Dr. Carson, if you had become Secretary of Health and Human Services in this Trump White House, what would be different today?
Well, I would probably be investing a lot of energy in things that are going on that I don't believe in, which would cause a lot of controversy. So I'm glad it didn't work out that way.
What would you be invested in the kinds of, let's dig a little deeper, the kinds of things that you believe in and don't believe in?
Well, I'm very pro-life, and I would not be happy about babies being encouraged abortions. I wouldn't be happy about that.
What about, Dr. Carson, I know many people talked about hepatitis B and COVID shots for young babies. Where do you draw the line on this often discussed issue?
Well, if there was a reason for it, it would be okay. But, babies who are not in danger of contracting hepatitis B, why would you vaccinate them? Why would you expose them to the risk of a vaccination until such time as they likely needed it? So I think that's an appropriate expenditure of energy to just bring some common sense to what's being done. So I very much approve of a lot of the things that are being done right now, and I'm very happy to work with those individuals.
What is it that you would like to see happen in a more balanced and thoughtful way at HHS, let's say as it relates to many of the panels that have been disorganized, their attitudes towards vaccination now, whether it should be less or more. How do you balance your illustrious history as a pediatric neurosurgeon with what you're seeing today?
Well, I think the important thing is to look at the data and let the data drive you rather than history and ideology. And I think a lot of that is being done now. It's shaking a lot of things up, and people aren't happy about it, particularly a lot of bureaucrats who are used to wielding unchecked power. Uh, we don't need unchecked power. We need looking at the facts.
You know, what advice do you give, Dr. Carson, for general health and wellness, particularly, let's say, concerning preventative care and healthy lifestyle choices, which has always been something that was paramount for you and Candy and your family?
Well, what I've always said is if everybody ate 3 well-balanced meals a day, drank 6 to 8 glasses of water, got regular exercise and sleep, and didn't put harmful substances into their body, it would greatly limit the need for the medical profession. But that's not going to happen anytime soon, but we're moving in that direction, and that's a good thing.
You know, given your past comments, and we've talked about this, Dr. Carson, on vaccine protocols, what is your current perspective on the balance between public health mandates and parental rights in making medical choices for their children?
Well, obviously, I'm not a big proponent of mandatory things in a free society. But I think the important thing is that people work with their physicians. They work with their caretakers, which means there has to be trust there. We've lost an enormous amount of trust over the COVID situation. And we're going to have to work very hard to gain that back again. And that includes our public health systems. All of us have to be involved in a very serious way to get that trust back again.
How would you make our healthcare system better, Dr. Carson, if you were advising?
Well, first of all, we have to recognize that we do not have good distribution of health care. Even though we spend twice as much as the next closest country in health care, and we do not have the best outcomes. So I would be looking at a relatively big change in the way that we administer medicine. One of the things that is occurring and has occurred for a couple of decades now that really works are health savings accounts. And you've heard President Trump mention them. You can read about them in a couple of my books from over a decade ago, how they would work in a very good way to distribute health to people. Right now, if you divide the number of people by the number of healthcare dollars, we're spending over $13,000 per capita per year for healthcare. We don't need to spend that much. If you have a health savings account, you automatically have skin in the game. You decide how you're going to spend those dollars. And, you know, the doctor's not going to get 5 CAT scans out of curiosity. Now, you're not going to let them get 5 CAT scans out of curiosity because that's coming out of your health savings account. And if you alter the account such that members of your family can donate money out of their health savings account to yours, each family becomes its own insurance company. If Uncle Joe is smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, everybody's going to be hiding the cigarettes and talking to him about it. What a difference that makes. And at the end of life, if you can transfer your health savings account to another member of your family, there's no incentive to spend tons of money. We spend 30 to 40% of all the money that's spent from healthcare insurance in the last 6 months of life, poking and prodding people and doing things that don't need to be done, that just need to be kept comfortable. That money builds up. And if you don't use it, or if you have a healthy lifestyle, it builds up even faster. And it won't take long before you have very substantial amounts of money. Now, the natural question is, what about catastrophic health care? What are you going to do about that? Well, you would buy a separate catastrophic health care account, but the cost of it would be much lower than health care insurance now, because the only thing you're covering is catastrophic health care. How often do you have that? Not very often. So it doesn't take a lot of collection of money to be able to cover that. Those kinds of things would really distribute health in a way that's responsible. And you say, what about the indigent people who don't have an employer to contribute to their health savings account? Well, the government will give them a health savings account and contribute to it each year until they get on their feet. Government's paying for that already. So the vast majority of people would be off the government dole. Those are the kinds of things that will really make a very big difference. And we're moving in that direction, so I'm encouraged.
And you do feel the government should have a very limited role?
In virtually anything. You know, when this country was formulated, it was formed with the ideal that the government would provide protection for the people, would provide a mechanism whereby people could get around, and would protect us from enemies, foreign and domestic. It has mushroomed into something that would be unrecognizable by the founders of this country. And really, that's the big difference between our original system and communism/socialism. The latter two take care of everything from cradle to grave, or at least they claim that they take care of everything from cradle to grave to sucker people into supporting them. Of course, they run out of money pretty quickly. As Margaret Thatcher said, socialism is great until you run out of other people's money. That's what always happens. There's no good exception to that.
Dr. Carson, it's never before. Well, we're going to take a break here on Your Voice, Your Future, and come back with our very special guest. I'm Armstrong Williams. So, Dr. Carson, I want to regress and go back down the memory lane. You've written some extraordinary best-selling books, Take the Risk, Gifted Hands. Let's talk about some of your extraordinary books and how they continue to make an impact. And let's start with Gifted Hands, where Cuba Gooding Jr. played you in the drama that was on national TV and seen around the world.
Yeah, you know, interestingly enough, that book was published more than 30 years ago. And I run into people all the time, particularly young adults, who tell me they had a profound effect on them when they were growing up. Just last week, one of the neurosurgery chairmen of a very prestigious school told me that one of the medical students, said he was pursuing that because of me and because of the book that he read. I hear that all the time. And it's very gratifying. It's wonderful to have been able to impact so many lives. And I hope that people can take the politics out of these things and just look at how do we encourage our young people to use the vast talents that God has given them. And that inspiration, that encouragement is all you need. If you take a child and you convince them that they're smart and that they can go somewhere, you've won half the battle already. The rest of the education becomes a lot easier.
Let's talk about one of my favorite books, You Have a Brain.
Yeah, You Have a Brain was really written principally for teenagers who sometimes act like they don't have a brain and don't think logically. We want to get people thinking logically early on and thinking what they can do, not what they can't do. And I expand on Think Big, where the T stands for talent, which God has given to every single person, not just the ability to sing and dance and throw a ball, But intellectual talent, we need to concentrate on the intellectual talent. The human brain is so sophisticated, billions and billions of neurons, hundreds of billions of interconnections, remembers everything you've ever seen, everything you've ever heard, can process more than 2 million bits of information per second. It is incredible. And we just need to start developing it. The H is for honesty. Just be honest. If you lead a clean and honest life, it really uncomplicates your life. You know, when I was running for president, sometimes the staff would be very nervous because I never screened the questions from the media. Because I said, the truth is the truth. The truth is the truth yesterday, it's the truth today, and it'll be the truth tomorrow. So if you always tell the truth, you don't have to try to remember what you said before. And it really uncomplicates your life. And then the I for insight, which comes from learning from other people's mistakes, learning from other people's triumphs. The N is for nice. We have to learn to be nice to each other. We're allowing ourselves to be manipulated into thinking that we're each other's enemies. And if those who want to see the downfall of our nation are successful, they will have us completely divided and fighting on the basis of race, age, income, political affiliation, religion, gender, you name it. And you see all that happening now, and it is weakening our society. We have to be smart enough to realize that we're being played, we're being manipulated. We're not each other's enemies. The K is for knowledge. The more knowledgeable you are, the more you can do, the more valuable you become. You get to determine your own value in the market. If you know a lot and you can do a lot, guess what? People are going to pay you. We need to make sure that our young people understand that. The B is for books, which is a mechanism for obtaining that knowledge. Some people say, I don't need to read books. I don't like to read. I can learn everything I need to learn by watching TV and videos. Well, that's like saying you can develop your muscles by watching somebody else lift weights. It doesn't work that way. You got to work it if you want it to work for you. The second I is for in-depth learning, really understanding the material that you're dealing with, not just cram, cram, cram so you can do well on the test, but dissecting it and understanding it. Everything becomes much easier when you truly understand. And the G in my book is for God. You know, this nation was formulated by people who had a deep faith in God. And many of the first people who came here had a deep faith in God, wanted to be able to practice their beliefs without being interfered with by the government. Our founding document says that we are one nation under God, that our rights come from our Creator. Our Pledge of Allegiance says we're one nation under God. Every coin in our pocket, every bill in our wallet says, in God we trust. So are we a bunch of hypocrites? Or do we actually believe that? Because if we do, then we do what our Creator said. And He said, love your neighbor. Not cancel your neighbor if you disagree with them. Can you imagine what place would be like if we began to do as our Creator said? It's a choice. We have a choice. What kind of nation do we want to be? What kind of neighborhoods do we want to have? We get to decide that.
Take the risk. Why is it so important to take the risk, Dr. Carson?
Well, you know, one of the reasons that we have these incredible brains is so that we can explore, so that we can move beyond, so that we can improve things. But sometimes that requires taking a risk. It took a risk for the Wright brothers to try to fly off the ground. And look where that has led in just over 100 years. Flying in space, flying to the moon. Incredible. But it took a risk. It takes a risk to do so many things you're not going to discover if you don't go out and take a risk. And I use an example of, I say, what if you have a child who grew up with people in the middle of the forest And they always said, "Oh, don't go in the forest because there are bears and things out there, and you'll never make it, and you'll be torn apart and eaten." You think those kids are going anywhere? No, they're going to stay in that house and vegetate. On the other hand, what if you have people say, "I want you to develop every talent and gift that you have so that you can go out and explore and benefit yourself and the rest of the world." Those are kids who are going to take risk. They're going to do it in an intelligent way. And that's what that book is about. Take the risk. And I tell people, when you're in a difficult situation, ask yourself 4 questions. What's the best thing that happens if I do this? And what's the worst thing that happens if I do this? What's the best thing that happens if I don't do this? What's the best thing that happens if I do it? Ask yourself, do it or don't do it? Yes or no? And ask yourself, what is likely to happen? And that sometimes will lead you to where you should be. I remember there was a case of a young man who had a tumor in the middle of his brainstem, a very vascular tumor, and no one would operate on him. And I went through those 4 questions. What's the best thing that happens if I operate on it? Well, the best thing would be you could actually get it out and he'd be alive. What's the worst thing that happens if I operate on it? He dies on the table. What's the best thing that happens if I don't operate on him? The tumor kills him anyway. You know, you can sort of see how that would guide your thinking. And we did operate on him, got the tumor out, and he did just fine.
Dr. Carson, I think one of your most important books, because it speaks for the times that we're in now, and I think Candy was so diligently involved with the perilous fight, overcoming our culture wars on the American family.
Yeah, well, we are in a perilous fight right now. We have people who absolutely planned some of the things that are happening to our society right now. You go back and look at the congressional record, January the 10th, 1963. This is all in the book. And Congressman Herlong of Florida wrote, read into the record the 45 goals of communism in America. And it's really sort of uncanny when you look and you see how many of those have been accomplished, such as gaining control of the public school system and the teacher unions so that you could indoctrinate the kids and later on control them. Gaining control of Hollywood and the news media so you could change the culture. Making sexual perversion normal, natural, and healthy so that you could change the morals of the people. Changing the church from the real gospel to the social gospel, where the preachers have their finger in the air, seeing which way the wind is blowing, and preach according to that. Driving wedges between parents and children. And it goes on and on and on. As you go down the list, you see all the things that are happening. This is intentional, what's happening to our society. And we have to be smart enough to recognize it and to fight vigorously for it. You take our country, there we were, a bunch of ragtag militiamen off in the hinterlands. No one thought very much about us. To become the premier #1 power in the world, it was not an accident. It was because of the values and principles that we held near and that we fought for. And some people say, yeah, but the United States was evil because they had slavery. How many times have I heard that? Well, slavery was evil, there's no question about it. However, if you know history, you also know that virtually every society has had to deal with slavery throughout the history of the world. So slavery did not make us uniquely evil. What did make us unique was that we had so many people who vehemently opposed slavery that we fought a bloody civil war and lost a large portion of our population to get rid of that evil. So maybe we should be emphasizing that. Maybe we should be teaching our children about the Underground Railway, whereby many slaves were liberated, about the people who risked their lives and their fortunes in order to help slaves get away. Those are the things that really should be emphasized, while at the same time, we can talk about the evil of slavery and how one person shouldn't own another and how we should be working to help each other. But that way we learn from the mistakes and we move forward. If we just keep harping on things that happened before, we're not going to make any forward progress.
Dr. Ben Carson is our guest. Your Voice, Your Future. I'm Armstrong Williams. We'll be back.
It is easier to build up strong children than to try and repair broken men.
The streets are plagued with crime, violence. There's a lot of poverty, and it's all a result of lack of education that's happening in our schools. So it really is a crisis.
We come from very different political perspectives, but we've come to the same conclusion, and that is there is a crisis in the classroom. Children are being deprived of quality of life because they're being deprived of a good education. We must solve this problem. It's incumbent upon all of us to join hands together to get this done.
We can't afford to wait one more day before we address these issues, because every day we lose another child.
Let's stop the politicking. Let's stop the games. Let's really do something to give these kids a real chance at life and being a part of that American dream.
We need accountability for funding. Many of the districts where you're seeing very low test scores, students graduating with very low literacy and math comprehension rates, they are receiving a lot of funding. So where is the money going where our kids aren't being adequately educated?
If you believe every child is deserving of a quality education, please go to educationjusticefoundation.com. You know, Dr. Carson has really had and continues to have a remarkable career. Director of pediatric neurosurgeon at Johns Hopkins University, presidential candidate, Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, highly rumored to be Secretary of Health and Human Services in Trump's second term, and then the president appointed Dr. Carson to the National Nutrition Advisor at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Dr. Carson, talk about that role at the Department of Agriculture and nutrition and how significant that is to the health, the wealth of everyday Americans.
You know, what this administration is doing is working across departmental lines. We have HHS, Department of Agriculture, FDA, and a number of others, recognizing that we have a problem with our health. We have a large number of children who are obese. You look at the people who are applying to the military, a large number of them cannot pass the basic test in order to qualify because of their health. Chronic diseases in more than a third of our population. You know, how did all this happen? You saw the great increase in autism, hyperactivity disorder. Are these things just plagues upon us? Did they just come up spontaneously, or are we doing something different? We see our life expectancy was going up, and then it plateaued, and then in the last few years it's been sort of going down. there's a problem. And a lot of it has to do with lifestyle, including what we eat. And that's why the Department of Agriculture is working with the other departments. You think about it starts with the soil and some of the things that we do to the soil instead of enhancing it, depleting it of its nutrients. And, by the time it gets to your plate, in many cases, it's gone through a lot of processing, and the vital vitamins and minerals are gone. And we replace them with something else. We replace them with artificial colors and artificial sweeteners and artificial this and that and the other. That food is not healthy. And so we're recognizing that now. And multiple studies have confirmed that it would make a huge difference if we start eating more whole grains, fresh fruits and vegetables, eliminate a lot of the processed foods, and exercise and drink appropriate amounts of water as opposed to alcohol and sodas and extremely sugary drinks. What a difference it makes. And we need to follow that food from the time it comes out of the ground to the time it gets to the plate and make sure that we're not depleting it of all the things God put in there, which are very medicinal. And there are multiple instances of people who go to various retreats where they'll spend 2, 3, 4 weeks and change their diet and change the way that they live and have dramatic changes in what happens to them. I have a friend who was having a complex problem with diabetes, and he went to Italy for 2 weeks, and his sugar normalized during that time, but he was in a place where all the food was grown, even the chickens, the eggs, fresh that morning, laid. No processing. His diabetes disappeared.
Dr. Carson, what are your thoughts on just over-medication of our society? You take a pill for everything. You take a painkiller. You go, you have these surgeries. They put you on these drugs so you don't feel the pain. And we're being exploited by the insurance companies. We're being exploited by big pharma. What are the solutions? What is it that everyday Americans need to do?
A pill for everything. That's our problem. I had so many parents come to me when I was practicing, and they would say, the pediatrician wants to start little Johnny on Ritalin or some other medication because of hyperactivity disorder. And I would ask them a couple of questions. I would say, can you watch television? Oh yeah, I can watch TV all day. Can you play video games? Oh, all day and all night. I said, tell you what, before you start him on that medication, I want you to spend some time with him. Wean him off of all those electronic games and television, and substitute time with you, reading and discussing the material. Let's do that for 3 months. And then let's talk about whether or not we should start him on the drug. The vast majority of them came back 3 months later. Kid was completely different. And that's, I think, a very good example of what happens, not only when we overstimulate them with all of these things, but also when we don't spend appropriate time with them and develop those relationships. What happens, we take a baby, as soon as they can sit up and balance themselves, you put them in front of the TV. Great babysitter. And then as soon as they're a little older and have some manual dexterity, you give them the controls for the video games. Zip, 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 zoom, zoom, zoom. Everything's changing all the time. And then they're 5 or 6, and you send them to kindergarten, and the teacher's not turning to something every few seconds. You think they're going to pay attention? I don't think so. So, we really need to examine our lifestyle. It's imperative that we do it now because technology is not going to stop marching forward. AI, virtual reality, kids will be able to go into a different world. They're studying about the Peloponnesian Wars. They can be right there in the middle of the Peloponnesian Wars, know who the players are, and it'd be a tremendous teaching tool. But it also has a lot of danger. I mean, it's difficult to get the kids away from their PlayStations and their Nintendos. What do you think they're going to do when they can disappear into their own created world? So we need to be thinking about these things and planning for them because they're going to happen anyway.
So, Dr. Carson, as we wrap with you, I have to ask you, what have you, no one knows medicine and the health field. You're one of the most knowledgeable on the planet. But what have you learned about the aging process for yourself? Could you have done something different? Are we really prepared for the aging process when things don't work and things become radically different? Give us some insights into that world.
Well, as someone who has aged, there's no question about it. Your body's not the same. Your tissues aren't as elastic, your muscles aren't as strong, your eyesight isn't as good, your hearing isn't as good, your thinking may slow down a bit. There are all kinds of things that happen as we age. But we can slow those things down by adopting a healthy lifestyle. There are areas called blue zones. There are 7 blue zones in the world. And they are places where a lot of people live to be 100 years old or more. One of those blue zones happens to be in the United States of America, in San Bernardino County, California. And interestingly enough, there are a lot of Seventh-day Adventists in San Bernardino County and around Loma Linda University. And they have a very healthy lifestyle. And that's the difference.
What is that lifestyle in the 2 minutes we have left, Dr. Carson? Give us some insights on what that is.
Well, about half of them are vegetarians, and the half that aren't vegetarian tend to look carefully at the food that they're eating and try to eat clean foods. They exercise. They get plenty of sleep and rest. They don't smoke. They don't drink. They don't use illicit drugs. And they have very accommodating social lives. They don't isolate themselves. It makes all the difference in the world. And anybody can adopt that lifestyle. You learn about that as a first-year medical student, about these blue zones and the difference. And they do that because they want medical students to realize that lifestyle matters. It's not arbitrary.
Dr. Carson, I cannot thank you enough for joining us. Your final thoughts?
Final thoughts is that America is a great place, and those of us who are living here are very fortunate to be here. And many people try to denigrate our country and say it's a horrible place and it's unfair to people. But if it was so bad, why are all these people trying to get in here? So I think it's a great place, a great opportunity, and we can make it greater if we learn from our mistakes and we make the choice to work with each other and recognize that we are not enemies.
Dr. Carson, I was going to say goodbye, but I'm not. But, you have built an incredible family. Candy, your wife, you've had the same wife, no other wife. Your kids are all remarkable success stories. Talk about, because it seems as though the institution of the family is disintegrating around us. We don't place emphasis on it anymore. There's so many definitions of what family is. Talk about the family and how that has sustained you and how it's sustained America and other cultures for centuries and centuries and centuries, and how that is the bedrock to the survival of any civilization.
Well, it was the model that God designed for us. A man and a woman, be fruitful and multiply and control your environment and support each other. That's what families are supposed to do. And when you take that element away and you leave a young person floundering, they're going to find a support system somewhere. But that support system may not really love them and be the nurturing thing that was designed to take care of them. And the values that they get from the street may not be conducive to a long and happy life. So there was a reason that God put that model there for us. And when we try to mess with the thing that God designed for us, we're saying that we're smarter than he is. And I don't know of any example worldwide, historically, where that was true. People are not smarter than God, and their ways are not better than God's. And the family is a perfect example of that. Now, I do realize that, sometimes things happen in families. In the case of my family, it turned out that my father was a bigamist. And it left my mother in a very difficult situation with very little education, trying to raise two sons by herself in the inner city. But I'll tell you what she had. She had great faith in God. And she instilled that faith in us as well. And she said, there is no problem that's too big for God to solve. Those are the kinds of values that come from family. We always had family worship. We read the Bible. We played our instruments. My mother sang. And that family time was very important in terms of what happened to us. When there was a lot of peer pressure on me to wear certain types of clothing, and I started letting my grades drop because I was more concerned about the shark skin pants and the silks and all these things. And I was complaining to her one evening. I said, I have to have these things. I'm the only one who doesn't have them. And she finally said, okay, Benjamin, I'll tell you what. I'm going to give you all the money I earned this week scrubbing floors and cleaning toilets. And she says, you take the money and you pay all the bills and you buy the food and all the necessities and take all the money that's left and buy all the silks and shark skins you want. I said, all right, now you're talking. I quickly discovered that my mother, with her third grade education, was a financial genius. And I never complained about that again. That was wisdom. That was wisdom that she got from God.
Dr. Ben Carson, I cannot thank you enough. I can't tell you how much we enjoyed our conversation with you. Coming up next, John Klar, the former contributor to the MAHA Report. I'm Armstrong Williams, and we'll be back.
As a home buyer, you need a lender who cares about your home ownership dreams. United Security Financial has been helping families secure their dream homes for 30 years. We're a national fair practice lender that provides affordable mortgages and low down payment programs to eligible home buyers. To learn how United Security Financial can help you secure your dream home, call 1-800-373-4186.
John, welcome back to the broadcast. John, why is it regenerative agriculture is suddenly central to the national health conversations?
Well, because regenerative agriculture refers really to rebuilding soils and reducing contamination and loss of water. It's also important. I mean, it's a vague term, but it's sort of, if you imagine it being a spectrum between what is called industrial agriculture, which is heavy in compaction of the soil and a lot of chemical foundation, and then on the other end of the spectrum you have organic. Regenerative refers to a lot of processes that are in between. So you may not be fully organic, but you could be less intensive in chemicals and soil loss. So that's why it's a broader term that refers to rebuilding soils and employing those practices that do so.
How does soil health directly affect nutrient density in our food?
Well, ironically, for decades, we have thought of plants as something you could just spray some chemicals on and they'll grow. But what we're learning is that plants really are nurtured by the soil, and particularly the soil microbes that feed them. Ultimately, you don't feed the plants directly. And we see this now with more and more knowledge about the human gut microbiome. You've probably seen more and more evidence shows us how important a healthy stomach or microbiome is to other health aspects. It's connected to everything. So if we improve the microbes in the soil, and this is what bison built, right, initially, and through manure, not through sprayed on urea, which is a synthetic fertilizer, then we have heavier amounts of nutrients, more productivity, and more microbes for both human and plant.
You know, what makes this MAHA initiative, John, different from past agricultural reforms?
Well, it's not entirely different because, as Secretary Rollins pointed out, she is using existing programs. And so, but they're being expanded to employ and encourage more regenerative practices. And it is a little different from a lot of past policies because it uses a carrot instead of a stick, if I might use a food metaphor. And so it really is, as Secretary Kennedy pointed out, designed to be an off-ramp. So it is voluntary for farmers to use, and I think it's really designed in part to target conventional farmers who may not be making big profits in soy or corn or other monocultures, which have more and more expensive inputs in the form of fertilizers themselves. Synthetic fertilizers tripled in cost during COVID. So this also reduces costs while increasing nutrient density. So it is more elaborate and involved than any past programs that I'm aware of.
Can regenerative farming realistically, John, compete with industrial agriculture?
Well, yes and no. Industrial agriculture is quite amazing, and it's important that we not see it as a dichotomy of one versus the other. But sustainability means not sustainable. And industrial agriculture is drawing down our precious aquifers faster than they can be replenished. Depending on who you talk to, we might only have 20 years left before, in some parts of the country that are very productive with industrial agriculture, we won't have any more water to pump out of the ground. We are contaminating groundwater that becomes drinking water. Soil is eroding by some studies at the rate of about 4 tons per acre of soil put to these monocultures, particularly corn. And when you have 92 million acres of corn and you're losing 4 or 5 tons of soil per year, that adds up. So one can recollect the Dust Bowl of the Great Depression. So whether or not it competes toe-to-toe, which many studies show that it does, that it is more productive, the existing system is in its death throes, many would say. It certainly has some problems. And so there's no harm in expanding the proportion of domestic foods that are grown, that are organic or regenerative. And we can't even meet the demand, foreign or domestic. So it has a huge economic boon for this country.
How does chemical-dependent farming, John, impact long-term public health?
Well, the biggest reasons are, as I've indicated, that they cause runoff and loss of soil microbes. And without the soil microbes, you have lower and lower amounts of the real basic nutritional needs that we have in our food, the trace minerals and elements that we need. But also, these crops are often dependent on pesticides and herbicides as well. And atrazine is very common in groundwater. It's notorious for its runoff. It's used in corn. It's an endocrine disruptor. Many of these other chemicals are damaging to human health. And ultimately, we're told we want to get rid of cows for their flatulence, but we are to replace their manure with synthetic fertilizers like urea, which is made from natural gas, which is methane made in a factory. So there are all sorts of unnatural, non-carbon dioxide ecotoxins that are spewed in industrial agriculture that are not present in organic and are less present in regenerative methods.
In the minute we have left, John, what does the $700 million pilot mean for farmers on the ground?
It means that farmers, particularly crop farmers who might want to dip their toe in the organic or regenerative water and shift some of their production to these types of or methods of production, might see higher profit margins. And the existing small farms that are often left out of the large crop subsidy and other programs will now get a piece of the pie. It's a small pittance, a drop in the bucket, but it goes to the small farms, the diversified farms, and the fruit and vegetable farmers that really need it at this time. And there's a huge demand for these foods, so it's a win-win.
I'd love to come out and see your farms someday. I'm sure it's an experience in technology and in all the latest. So it's always a pleasure seeing you. I enjoy seeing the cattle background and having you talk about an issue that you have so much passion and love and respect for, and you see it's still the true future of America, that we need to get back to farming. Thank you so much for joining us, John. Thank you, Dr. Carson, for joining us at this edition of Your Voice, Your Future and WGLA 24/7. I'm Armstrong Williams.